Okay, Hope, welcome to the Abundance Club. I'm really, really happy to have you here and that we've been able to coincide and bring our worlds together. So, thank you for joining me. It's lovely to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Amy.
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting conversation because I know with your background around health and nutrition, but also your influence on soul, supporting soul-led entrepreneurs as well, and being invested in the energetics and the spiritual realm and human design and all of the goodness. I want to start with, though, I guess, helping our audience to understand a little bit more about you and what you offer. So I know that you help women entrepreneurs to really cultivate a sense of freedom and abundance and obviously strength and vitality in their bodies so that they can then not only connect back to themselves, but transform and grow their businesses in a really sustainable way. So I think that this link between what we're cultivating on the inside, like in our micro environment, and how that's influencing, how that's informing the reflection of our life, and what we're
Mhm.
experiencing in our life and in our business, I think is a really important conversation. So, how important have you found this? Maybe in your own experience in kind of diving into your inner landscape in order to shift the outer manifestation versus the other way around. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
we tend to look outside and want to change that
Mm-hmm.
about our business and change this and that instead of, and maybe neglecting that important inner work in our inner environment. So do you want to start by touching on that and the way that you support
Yeah.
clients with that?
Yeah. I love that question. And I don't think I've ever been asked a question just like that. So I love how you asked that question. And I agree. I do think that so often we start with the outer world and then we try to use that to fix whatever it is that's going on inside. And I mean, I did that for years and it was all very we talk about you hear about the masculine way of doing things, and that's kind of what I was caught up in is kind of this masculine way of running business and its structures and strategies, which, is all important, but the energy behind it is what was lacking for me. And so really, for me, it wasn't until I'd worked with business coaches and all kinds of coaches and mentors and blah, 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 and all the things, learning all the strategies. And I felt like nothing was really working for me. Like, they worked for a little while, but I never felt like it clicked with me. And I never felt really good doing the strategies that I was being told to do. Like, oh, these are the strategies that work for this. I have a brick and mortar and I have an online business. So I'm using strategies for all the things. And it wasn't until I started working with a spiritual coach where she wasn't a human design expert, but she had this little piece of human design in the like little program I was in with her. And that for me was kind of the catalyst, was just dipping my toe in the water with human design and understanding me in this deep, talking about like the inner work, right? Like that deep uh, inner spiritual level and understanding myself, that was kind of the catalyst. And from there, it just kind of opened this whole new world of, okay, there's a lot of inner stuff that needs to be happening right now to really be able to feel like if I'm jiving with these strategies and all these other things that these coaches have been telling me to do. So for me, it wasn't until I dove into the inner work and, diving into my human design and then doing other just emotional, energetic healing stuff with, there's inner child work and then there's, belief patterns and working through all the inner stuff that things really started clicking for me and kind of also being the catalyst to helping heal my body because I didn't know it at the time, but I was like in the thick of burnout. And I was finishing my training through FDN. I'm a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and you do labs on yourself. So I was doing labs myself, and my labs come back, and I consider myself a very healthy person. I work out, I eat clean, all the things. My adrenals were like in the toilet. Like I'm looking at my labs, like, oh, this is really bad. So it was a wake-up call and recognizing that the way I had been doing things was not sustainable,
Mm.
it was not aligned, or else my body wouldn't be in such bad shape. And then, you kind of like hindsight, right? 2020, I'm thinking like, oh, that's why I've been getting sick all the time. And that's why I was getting injured all the time. There all the things kind of added up. But the inner work, all of this kind of coinciding, intersecting with each other, the timeline of events, the inner work really is also what propelled my kind of healing journey with that too, and being able to use all the deep energetic and inner work I was doing to help heal my body, just getting in alignment with how I was really designed to be operating.
Mm, mm. And I think that that's so important. You mentioned about the masculine way of operating, and I think we need to really call that out more because I think as women we have been conditioned in this paradigm that's so heavily focused on achievement as a measure
Mm,
of success and worth, and we're so heavily in our masculine, like even if you just look at corporate and women that are working corporate and working 40 hours a week, and I think about the importance of coming back home to our feminine essence and understanding more about our nature, which is in cycles, right? And in
hmm.
seasons and in cycles. And you speak of human design, and that for me was a really pivotal thing as well in understanding actually this is the energetics of who I am. This is more of my nature. And it almost
Yes.
gives you permission to really anchor into that. So I'd love to just speak on that nuance a little bit because that can be for women who are feeling like, who are listening to this conversation, feeling like, yeah, I resonate with that. I feel like I'm constantly striving, achieving, hustling, whether that's in your employment or in your own business or in your motherhood. How can we start to welcome in another idea, another alternative, to lean into that softness? So for you, it was getting your labs done. And then that was a bit of a wake up call, sitting with
Hmm.
the figures and going, holy shit, I need a shift here. And for
Yeah.
others, it might be a diagnosis or a burnout or just that feeling inside like this isn't working anymore.
Right. Right.
Where do
Yeah.
we start as women on that journey going like, this feels overwhelming. This doesn't feel like it fits my skin. But
Hmm.
can you mention, like, what are a couple of things? You mentioned human design, and what are the
Hmm.
things that you found that were your teachers
Hmm.
disguised as challenges,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That
yeah.
catapulted you into more of a freedom fueled business on your own terms.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, human design was a big piece for me. I think first, the first step is, they always say, it's the awareness, but I think you can't underestimate that. Like the awareness and just being aware and calling it out, like calling it what it is, I think is an important first step, and to not skip past that step.
Yeah.
Because if we're not aware of it and we're not aware of the and conscious of the situation that we're in that needs to shift, then it's not going to shift. So I think that's the first step. And two, I think just to add to that piece, bringing curiosity and compassion, because I know for me as like a type A perfectionist, it was all just judgy, like just judging myself and hating myself for this and that and all that. And I agree with you about the permission thing with human design, because I totally felt like this sense of validation and permission to really like pull on those pieces and like, this is me, this is how I've been divinely designed. And I think it did kind of help me soften those pieces where for years I'd been judging and hating myself for this thing and that thing that I was trying to change. And then when I really studied my human design, I'm like, oh no, like that's just how I'm created this way. Like I'm designed this way, and I can accept and embrace it, and kind of figure out how to use it as a superpower rather than seeing it as you know, a hurdle or something to overcome. And so I think that's an important piece of it. And I think the other thing for me is you mentioned things kind of working in cycles. I think that's the thing. And I help my clients with this too, is really, it sounds, I feel like when I say it out loud, it sounds so elementary, like use your period, use your menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
But we weren't taught that. At least I wasn't. And I think, the extent, I don't know how it is in your country, but in our country, it's like, oh, you have a period, you can get pregnant, period, the end. Like you don't learn anything about it. There's no education about, unless you're not taught that. And unless you have parents who are very aware that and teach you these things, you just kind of figure it out on your own. So for me, the kind of cycle syncing with my business and all that was a
Mm.
huge tool, and really leaning into that and understanding like I am a cyclical being, and going back to what we were saying about the masculine way of doing things, right? Men want to run on a 24-hour hormonal cycle. So yeah, they can get up and do the same thing yesterday that they did today, and it's totally fine. But that doesn't work that way for women. And I know for my clients, this is also another kind of permission slip in kind of giving yourself quote unquote permission to slow down certain times of the month when normally in the, kind of masculine paradigm, it's just like, just keep pushing. And you're trying to have the same productivity and the same output day in, day out, 24/7, 365. And we're just not designed that way. So the cycle syncing thing was a big tool for me and really honing in on that piece within myself. And then just you mentioned the labs, and I mentioned the labs, that piece too of there's pieces of your physical body that have to be addressed while you're addressing all of these kind of energetic, emotional, spiritual things as well. So it's just, and that's really what I love about my work so much is this intersection of all of these things
Mm.
because, for me and kind of my perspective on all this. You can't have one without the other. Like you can't address the physical without addressing this emotional, energetic piece, and you can't address the energetic, emotional without the physical. And I think so often too, a lot of times we think it has to be one or the other, but they work together. And I think the biggest transformations come when we're able to combine those two worlds together, like the 3D, the 5D, all of that, kind of put it all together. I think that's when we really have the biggest breakthroughs and the biggest transformations and have the biggest uh we have the biggest milestones like in our business and success is when we can put all those pieces together.
Mm. Yeah. And I love there are a few words that you said that I just think are so powerful, like awareness, really like, and I totally agree with you, is that awareness just really starts to move the needle for us if we can feel like we're in this place of like, I don't know what to do, or I don't know where to begin, but I know that there's something that's not right.
Yes, right.
Calling it out and meeting it. So I love that. And then another word that you said was that curiosity, right? I think you might have even said compassion as well. And I think that those two pieces together are so important. Just treating ourselves. I think we can tend to, as women, go into like, I fucked up. I've done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no good. Look how I've neglected myself. Or look
Mm-hmm.
at whatever story you want to make up about whatever that reading is that you might get from having your labs done, or and we then go into perpetuating a whole new cycle of shame and blame and
Yep.
all of this.
Yep.
So um inviting in the softness to be able to come into that feminine, that more feminine approach is around deep acceptance and deep understanding and compassion, which feels so important. So when you have clients who you are working with who are struggling in their business, let's say, because you work with a lot of entrepreneurs who are
Mhm.
struggling in the business, what are the things that you'll then look at to say, right, okay, what's happening here? What are the things that we need to look at first and foremost?
hmm So for me, the first piece are the physical pieces. So it's looking at the labs. Like, let's not just guess what's happening, like why you're having headaches or brain fog or your periods are crazy or piece, whatever it is. So for me, it's the physical pieces. Let's look at the labs and just get like concrete data. This is exactly what's going on in the body, period. We don't have to guess.
Yeah.
So once we look at the labs and we get an idea of, okay, this is where, the imbalances are showing up, then we can put it together with the other parts, with the more spiritual. So that's when I tie in human design. Okay, it's looking like your minerals this here and here are off, whatever. Your adrenals or whatever is all out of balance. So then I can tie it into, okay, let's look at your root center and your chart and see what's happening there. We look at defined versus undefined. We look at the gates and all this. So I can tie in those pieces of looking at the physical parts of the body, tying in the human design pieces, and then we can kind of uncover what are the patterns, the patterns, the beliefs, the potential conditioning that's kind of perpetuating these things in the body that's causing these physical things to happen.
Mm.
And that's when we can work through the deconditioning of the patterns. And you mentioned earlier about the shame is a big one. And you mentioned about the worthiness tied to, productivity or how much you achieve. And those are major ones for women. And I tell my clients this all the time, especially with the shame. Shame is an emotion that lives deep in our sacral center, and our sacral center is tied to our reproductive organs. If you wonder why women have so many reproductive issues, hello, like we're born with it. It's generationally, we can't
Mm.
escape the shame and the guilt. It's there. We're born with it from however many generations past, and it just those belief patterns are just perpetuated by, if we want to go down the rabbit hole of the patriarchy and just the masculine structures that we're living in, and it takes work to undo that. And I mean, I have crazy stories of just like these energy sessions I have with my clients, things that are being released and the th physical things that happen in their bodies when they have these emotional releases of shame and guilt that's just been,
Mm.
in their cellular DNA for however many generations. So I think th those are the pieces. Like once we see what's happening in the physical body, then we can go into these other pieces and really pull out like where are these patterns that are continuing that the cycles, right? Let's stop the cycle basically.
Yeah, beautiful. So you've mentioned human design quite a bit. So for those who are listening who are newer to this, because honestly, I like you, I had a bricks and mortar business for like 15 years of yoga
Hmm.
studios and
Yeah, mine
learning
is
all that.
Pilates.
Yeah, right. Similarities. I was very much, I can see now how I was very much driven in the masculine. And I'm a projector, but I felt
Mm,
like I operated my business for a long time as
as
a
a
generator,
generator, I'm sure.
right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And when I understood, and so this has only been, we sold our businesses a couple of years ago or a year or so ago. Only in the last couple of years have I learned about human design and understood that. And I spoke about it giving me permission, but it was almost just this calling home, like it's safe
Mm,
to be this. So for
hmm.
those who are listening who don't know what human design are or who are newer to it, what can you share about what it is and how freeing it is? It's for some
Hmm.
people they might not find it freeing, they might find it confronting, but just speaking
Mm.
a bit more about the superpower that you say in understanding what your human design is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So human design is essentially your energetic blueprint, right? So it's putting together these kind of ancient teachings from the chakra system and the Kabbalah tree of life and I Ching, and it's putting it together with some more modern day sciences like neuroscience and quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and it puts it together in this body graph, right? So we're understanding ourselves at this deep energetic level, like how we're interacting with the world around us, how we're here to interact with other people, relationships. And I agree with you that it's the experience when you really take a deep dive into your human design and you call it your human design experiment, right? It can it's a lot of mixed emotions that come up because for me, yes, I'm with you. I felt this sense of like freedom and validation and like the coming home. I love that you said that because I totally resonate with that. But I do think there are some confronting things, the words you use that you really feel. And because I think for a lot of my clients when we're talking through a lot of aspects of their chart, it all sometimes it doesn't resonate. Like we're talking about and they're like, no, no, that's not me. And I love those moments because that's really the invitation for the deconditioning. Like we talk about deconditioning, which is essentially just kind of pulling back these layers of, conditioning of beliefs and thought patterns that are from society, your family, generations, whatever, that aren't really yours, but they're kind of these layers stacked on top of layers of what is yours, what's underneath there. And we just kind of have to keep peeling back one layer at a time to get to kind of the crux of who you are at this energetic level underneath all of the layers of conditioning. And for me, those moments when my clients are like, that doesn't, like, that's not me, that doesn't make sense. That's the moment for like, we're on the verge of a breakthrough because there's so much conditioning that needs to happen to kind of pull back these layers to get to that, for you to really feel in your body like, oh no, that is me. Now I get it.
Mm.
So I love the journey of these just I love the aha moments and the light bulb moments and these just revelations in the journey as my clients dive into their human design and with me even and then even past our work together as they continue the journey because it is, I mean, just to reiterate what you said, it is a coming home. It's just a remembrance of who you are, who you were divinely created to be, and this how you were here to play this divine part in the cosmic, you know, play of life. And it's such a great tool to be able to really honor your energy
Mm.
and use it in a way that's productive is not the word I want to use because that seems still kind of a masculine term, but to use it most like effectively and efficiently and optimally so we really understand like where our energy is meant to go and how we're meant to use it, our rest cycles, our work cycles, our all of that. I mean, there's so much goodness that you can pull out of the chart. And then for me, using it with wellness, we can talk about exercise and food and all these other parts.
And when's a good time to exercise and what
Mm-hmm.
type of exercise as well.
Mm-hmm.
which I think is really cool. I love this word deconditioning because I feel like we're all on this pathway of deconditioning as
Mm-hmm.
we shift from this masculine paradigm, as we shift from more of this entrenchment in our 3D reality to realizing that first and foremost, we are subtle energetic beings, right? So going
Mm-hmm.
from that density that we identify, that we associate ourselves with, to more of the subtleness of our being and all this. So I
Mm-hmm.
love this deconditioning and this peeling back of the layers. And I think what comes with that, and this probably also ties into, the conversation about working with women who are, let's say, wanting to make a shift out of the work that they've been doing to perhaps more soul led work. And I know,
Mm-hmm.
particularly with a lot of women who are shifting out of corporate and wanting to grow their own business and do something that feels really fulfilling, that, and I know this for me on my own journey in selling the business, there's a real loss of identity
Mm-hmm.
that comes with that. So I
Mm-hmm.
love, again, this coming home with human design. It's like, you're welcome here into this new space, and this is
Mm-hmm.
the way that you can operate. And for me as a projector, because there's a lot of rest that's involved with that,
Mm-hmm.
and there was part of my conditioning that was like, I'm not productive if I'm
Right.
resting,
Yep.
and I still struggle with that. So what can you
Mm-hmm.
offer to people that have found out their human design and they're just like, I I can see that. I can see how that might be
Mm-hmm.
beneficial, but I just don't know how to get there. I'm still having
Yes.
internal struggle with
Mm-hmm.
actually owning that and living.
Embodying that. Yeah.
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 It is hard. I mean, I'll say, I mean, I have the same, there's parts of my chart where I feel the same. And, I think it's interesting to me because especially working with women, it's interesting pulling back, some of the pieces in their charts because there's pieces like the projector thing for sure. And manifestors kind of, manifestors have these kind of waves of creativity that come and go, and they have rest phases and production phases. And there's other pieces of a chart too, like the root center and certain profile lines and certain types of strategy, how you're meant to make decisions. And I found like with a lot of women, there's aspects of the chart where they feel like, well, if I were to really embody that, it would be selfish, right? And maybe the rest phase, maybe that resonates with you or people listening, if you're, especially if you're a parent, right? If you're a mom, you're like, well, that's, I can't do that because that would involve me putting myself first, right? There's so much of that conditioning. And I find that that's something that comes up a lot with the women that I work with, the worthiness piece that we've touched on. And then these pieces where it's like, oh, but if I were to do that, it would be selfish. And so I, the point I like to get across to my clients that there are aspects of every, I think, I mean, I would say of everybody's chart that could be considered quote unquote selfish because it's either involves you making decisions because it's what you want to do, it's you putting your energy into something because it's what feels good for you. But and it's the whole like I hate using this as an analogy, and maybe one day I'll come up with something more creative. But the analogy of the putting your oxygen mask on first that we like hear about all the time, but it really is that piece when we're looking at some aspects of the chart that quote unquote could feel selfish because when you're not embodying your energy to its fullest capacity, right? This is where we get energetic leaks. We hear the term energetic leaks, so energy leak, energetic leaks. It's an energy leak because now you're not operating in alignment with the energy that you're here to operate within. And it's draining. And
Yeah.
so when your energy is draining, then you're not able to put your full energy into everything else, your relationships, your kids, your family, your spouse, your partner, your business, all the things. And that's I think that's the big lesson that's long answer to the question that you asked. But I think that's the part I would love for women to really contemplate, right? Because it requires contemplation, I think, to like really embody that, is that you're here to embody your design, and that requires you to focus on you. Like that's what it requires. And in order for you to focus on you, that's how you operate at your, highest capacity in everything else in your life, your business, your family, relationships, business, whatever it is, career. And I think that's something that takes a while to really let it land like in your body. And it's I mean it's a process. Like it's not something that happens overnight, but I think that's the point I want to get across to women listening is that you really have to focus on you and your energy in order for you to operate full out in every other area of your life.
And it's almost a bit of rebellion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that, and I know that's true for me and other women that have been used to operating in a certain way, or have been used to maybe putting other people's needs before their own. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that this ties in well to the conversation around business and business expansion, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and the other word that comes into mind is like just being really discerning now about, like you talk about the energy leaks, but yeah, where is your energy leaking? Where is your
Mm-hmm.
energy going that
Mm-hmm.
it's actually not serving you
Yeah.
to do
Yep.
that anymore, right? And
Exactly.
to then be able to channel it into your higher purpose, what you
Mm-hmm.
do. But
Right.
we've been conditioned to believe that that is selfish, right? We have to
Right.
give to others. So yeah,
Yes.
so it's a really big process. So I just want to speak to that for people that are in that thing of like, this feels really big. Yeah, it does feel big because we are deconditioning and we are creating new neural pathways and we are walking a path that we've never walked before.
Mm-hmm.
But you're safe to do that and you can establish safety. So what did that look like for you in supporting yourself? You mentioned that you hit burnout and maybe had
Mm-hmm.
some things, showing up um,
Mm-hmm.
that were unfavorable. What did it really look like for you to then take action to change
Mm-hmm.
that trajectory into,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That's a good question. I think the physical pieces, I mean, for me, that was the easy part because it's like that comes easy to me. It's like, oh, I, made myself a protocol and I'm going to change my diet and do these things. I'm going to take these certain supplements to fix these things. That was the easy part. But it's like I tell my clients, you can take all the supplements you want and you can spend thousands of dollars on supplements, but if you're not doing the other emotional, energetic pieces to
Mm.
really get to the root cause of why these physical things are showing up in the body, then you just have really expensive pee, right? Because you're just peeing it all out and it's not doing anything. So I think for me, it was, that part was the easy part. And I think it was kind of a two steps to this the process because there was I think something that we don't talk about enough is the grieving process that happens in the deconditioning. And I was not given the warning for that. So I think that like hit me like a ton of bricks. Like just it's not like a one-time thing, like it's a one-day thing, like, oh, I grieved this past version of me. No, it's like shows up in waves. And then there's more deconditioning that happens, and then there's this other grieving process. And it's the grieving is you're literally grieving this past version of you and having to let that version of you go in order to step in to this kind of next level version of you. That's kind of the way I picture it. And so for me, it's kind of this constant push and pull of like this grieving process, and then there's expansion, and then grieving process and expansion. And the expansion is just really taking a deep look at where the deconditioning needs to happen, right? And where are there sticky things in my energy where I feel like resistance. And, I have my clients, we talk about the not self theme, right? Everybody, all the 5 types have a not self theme. And it's kind of this, use
Can
it as
you
your
mention what they
compass.
are? Could you mention what they
Yeah.
are for the different
Yeah,
types?
for sure. Yes. So generators and manifesting generators, it's frustration. For mani-gens, it's going to be a little bit more of an impatience with the frustration. Manifestors, it's anger, and then bitterness for projectors, and disappointment for reflectors. And
So
so
this kind of
this is
shows you when you're out of alignment, basically.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes. So I tell my clients, like, use it as a compass. Like, this is kind of your to know, okay, when do I need to pivot, kind of reassess the situation and figure out where am I out of alignment. So for me, it's really just kind of using that as the guidepost. Like, for me, it's frustration and impatience. I'm a manifesting generator. So frustration and impatience, when that's coming in, I can kind of reflect and that curiosity word again and be curious, like where's the resistance coming from? Why is it here? What can I do about it? Kind of thing. And again, just going into that same kind of dance with the grieving and then the expansion. I think that's kind of been what my journey has been like. And I think at the beginning, again, because I was not informed of like the amount of grieving that happens in this, like,
Mm.
you hear about, I always hear people talk about, oh, dark night of the soul and all, and I was like, I don't even know, like, what is that? But experiencing that, where it's like you hit this, for me, I hit this point where I'm like, what is life? Like, what am I doing? Right? Am I on the right path? Like you have these moments where you kind of question life. And then that's the moment where you're on the edge of like the next big expansion. So it's just being able to kind of have this dance with the growth and the expansion and the grieving and all the emotions that come from really taking ownership of your own personal evolution. And I really think that's what it's about. And that's what I love helping women with. It's just stepping into their own journey of personal evolution. I mean, that's what we're here for. Our soul is here to evolve. And if it's not, that's when we start to feel that stagnancy and our energy starts to feel just bleh. And so if we can like really take ownership of our own personal evolution, then this is how our soul thrives. And we're able to build these soul-led businesses like you're helping women do. And we're able to really own and step into our purpose.
Yeah. I really love that you spoke to that with the grief because I think that is so important. I don't think that it's spoken to enough. I
Mm-mm.
think that as women we grieve in silence or we hold ourselves back from doing
Yes.
that. Again, part of the conditioning that we've taught that there's a level of weakness there and you don't cry
Mhm.
and also women aren't being equipped in how to really hold space for others
Right.
to be in that as
Yes,
well, right?
exactly.
Like I'll
Hmm.
only show you in my friendship circles. Like it might be like I'll only show you me when I'm happy, right?
Hmm.
I can be the best version of me and not all the other elements. So, and I love it because I feel personally like grieving is our pathway into surrender,
Oh, 100%.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
and when we surrender, we line up with our soul, right? We
Mm-hmm.
line up with the will of our soul, the will of our divine, and we go, okay, here we go. And I believe that's when we can really propel ourselves
Mm-hmm.
into our soul led path. So I love that you mentioned that and that you mentioned that you went through that as well. And it's the death and the rebirth, right?
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah, for
death and that
sure.
loss of that old identity. Can you speak to this around middle of the life hormonal, like meeting perimenopause and menopause? Because
Mm-hmm.
I see women who get to that point, there's a sense of grieving then as well,
Mm.
more of a feeling of that they're losing themselves.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit on the
Yeah.
importance of supporting women?
Yeah. That's such a good point. And yeah, these kind of life transition stages can be a real time of grief, and it could potentially be a really challenging time as you're kind of shifting from one, stage to the next or one era to the next. And I think, yes, is the perimenopause to menopause stage hard? For women, yeah, like it kind of sucks. Being an estrogen driven human, like can be really sucky. Like it comes with a lot of problems, but it also comes with a lot of superpowers. And so I think what I love helping women while they're still in their menstruation phase of life, being able to see their menstrual cycle as a superpower, we can kind of walk into that next hormonal stage feeling a little bit more empowered and less like, oh God, this is gonna suck. So I think there's that. And then I also think I love this, it's just kind of tying a human design little spin here because there's a lot of big transitions in human design that happen around the age of 40, which is around kind of starting that or somewhere within that perimenopause stage. And I think that's important to call out too. Like there's a lot of really big shifts that happen energetically and just like astrologically when we're around that 40 mark. And I think that's really powerful. Like, yeah, you're stepping into a phase where it could be more challenging hormonally, but you're also stepping into this new kind of phase of wisdom that's given divinely to us around this kind of 40-ish year mark. So I think that's something else to be excited about too. So I think when you can go into the, you know, these life transitions and these different stages of your hormones in a more empowered way. And I think the other piece too that I wanted to say I left out is understanding what's happening. I think that's another thing. Because like I said, with our periods, like we weren't giving a manual for that. At least I wasn't. Maybe some people were. It's the same thing with perimenopause and menopause. We're not giving a minute for later. You hear from your grandma how terrible it is, right? And how much it sucks. And so we go into it. And what I also like to share with my clients, in so many indigenous cultures, going into menopause is this rite of passage.
Mm.
And because they see it as this rite of passage and as this kind of evolution into this next stage of wisdom, they have very minimal symptoms. It's the view, it's the energy around what this means that, and I strongly believe that. And so here, at least here in kind of the Western world, it's like, oh, you hear menopause sucks and you're gonna have this problem, this problem, this. So we go into it already because we're hearing from everybody how terrible it is. I think if we can shift our mindset around what it is and what it means, I really do think we can have a different experience going into kind of this next stage.
Mm. I love that, right? I mean, and that just comes back to life as a reflection of your energy and
Hmm.
your mindset. And so it can, and that's what I teach as well, is that it can be a time of real celebration and coming home and into your
Hmm.
power and your wisdom. And I know I feel that for myself being in my early 40s, like feeling like I'm moving into this whole new phase that I can design my life as in alignment with what feels true, what feels right
Hmm.
for me, rather than um, what other people. I was listening to someone even talk about what can happen in your brain when you're reaching that time that you lose some of the people pleasing networks in your brain.
Mm.
Like, and I'm like, I love that. I love that.
Yes.
So I think all of that is really cool. So this kind of leads then into the conversation, which I know you were passionate about around mineral balancing. Do you want to speak a little about that and how this can be a real game changer
Yeah.
for your life, your business? Yeah, do you want to
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So mineral balancing is, I mean, I nerd out on the mineral balancing stuff. I could talk about it all day, every day, but I love tying it into all of these energetic, spiritual things we're talking about too. I love the intersection of all of it. The mineral balancing piece for me is foundational. And, women come to me and they're telling me like, I just want you to fix my hormones. Just fix my hormones. And the thing is, the hormones are never the problem. Like hormones are just chemical messengers telling us that something is going wrong, but it's never the root cause. It's something that it's further down the chain that we have to address. It's a different root cause. And we're addressing the physical body. The minerals are the foundational piece because minerals, and you might have heard this if you ever took biology in school, minerals are considered the spark plugs of the body, meaning that basically every reaction that happens in the body, the minerals play a part, whether they're the catalyst, they're the cofactor, they're required for basically every reaction in the body. So your hormones, your enzymes, your neurotransmitters, like all of those require specific minerals. It's a specific balance of minerals. So for me, it's the foundational piece. So I never start with the hormones. I never start with the gut. It's always starting with the minerals.
say?
And I love being able to tie the minerals to human design because we can look at, again, kind of going back to how I was saying, and you look at the labs and then kind of look at, kind of putting the pieces with the human design together because we can look at the different chakras because the chakra system is within the human design system and look at which minerals we want to focus on based on, where the energy might be lacking in specific chakras in the body. So being able to tie those two pieces together is really fun and being able to really, again, kind of where the science and spiritual worlds collide and really approaching it from this kind of two-pronged way. But the minerals, I also think that minerals, I don't think they're talked about enough. I don't think that we address them enough. And I just don't think people understand how crucial they are, or they don't understand how to really address those first. And here at least in the States, I don't know if it's like this in Australia, but it's in conventional medicine. It just, I mean, yeah, they might do blood labs to check a little bit, but it's never something they talk
Mm.
about. It's more just they go straight to talking about the hormones or whatever. It's like, okay, well, yeah, we can give you this, that, or whatever your hormones, but you're still not getting to the root cause. So it just, I don't think very many people really understand how minerals really operate in the body and how much that is a foundational piece to our overall health is addressing that first as a foundational piece.
So when you talk about minerals, then what are the key ones that you see
Hmm.
showing up that
Hmm.
women are imbalanced in?
Yes, yeah, good question. So there's four macro minerals, meaning we need them the most, we use them the most, right? They're macro. So it's calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium. So those are going to be the big four that we address first and foremost. And those really are the ones that are out of balance the most. Magnesium and sodium Well, I can't say. I was going to say the most. Potassium is too, but magnesium and sodium, our adrenals use more magnesium and sodium than any other part of the body.
Mm.
And kind of going back to what we were saying about the whole perimenopause thing, the adrenals are something I really hone in on with my clients because they do so much, especially in a woman's body. As we go into perimenopause and menopause, our ovaries are producing less estrogen, right? So our adrenals have to take up the slack for that. So by the time we're in menopause, now our adrenals are responsible for making what little bit of estrogen we can make, but they also make progesterone. So we're asking our adrenals to do a lot. I firmly believe that so many women struggle into perimenopause and menopause because they're going into it with their adrenals a total wreck. If you're going into that stage of this kind of hormonal shift and your adrenals are already struggling, you're going to ask it to do more work when they're already overworked. So the adrenals are a big one that I hone in on with my clients. And sodium, magnesium, and potassium, all three of those really are really crucial to help the adrenals operate optimally. Potassium also is really important for your thyroid, and our thyroid is important for our metabolism. And so I think those three really are ones that I hone in. I see them imbalanced the most, and those are the ones that we really hone in on the most.
And then would you be recommending people to get them in a salt, like in a form, like ingesting it from their foods, or
Mhm.
actually getting it as a mineral?
Yeah, yeah. So both really. I mean, food. I'm always a proponent of food first, but supplements too. So when I'm doing, so I run when I test minerals, I do an HTMA, which is a hair tissue mineral analysis. So you're literally sending in some of your hair. And then I work directly with the lab where I customize their mineral protocol, which is a supplement. It's like a powder supplement directly to their lab. So you're literally getting everything you're deficient in or is out of bounds, whatever, in this protocol. And then we're also addressing with the diet, especially with things like potassium. There's kind of this threshold your body has with supplementation with potassium. It's only going to absorb a certain amount from a supplement. So we really do want to hone in on high potassium foods. And the magnesium is the same. Like we still want to focus on high foods high in magnesium, but just, I mean, unless you're like growing your own food, like our soil, at least here in the States, our soil is crap. So it's just, we've lost a lot of that nutrient-rich soil that food used to be grown in, and so our food just isn't as nutrient dense. So our food is naturally lower in well, a lot of minerals, but especially magnesium. So yeah, I'm really a proponent of both. There's specific minerals where like magnesium is one I think everybody should be supplementing. I think the number is like 60 to 70% of us are deficient. I really think the number is probably higher than that in magnesium. And so everybody should be supplementing. Not to say you shouldn't also eat foods that are high in magnesium, like leafy greens, nuts, seeds. Those are some fish, like those are the highest sources, but also supplementing just to kind of fill in the gaps.
Yep, yep, yeah, great. And that's the best way is just ingesting it, right? Or
Yeah.
have it on your skin or take it in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. To
Both.
transdermal is a great way to get extra magnesium for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Amazing. Oh, okay. So I guess just to kind of look at wrapping it up now, what do you feel you are really passionate about supporting women? If you could pick one area or one piece of wisdom and advice that you would want to impart on women who are on this journey and wanting to be empowered in their health, but also in strengthening and growing their business, like what for you is something that you just feel is non-negotiable and that you would love to, for all women to know or to remember, to realize?
Mhm. That's a
I
big
know that's a
question.
really tricky question to kind
It's
of
a big
distill
one.
it into, or there might be more
I,
than one, but
yeah, no, I mean, honestly, if I have to pick just like one thing, I think it really comes down to listening to your body. And I know that sounds very simplistic and trite, but I think it comes down to listening to our bodies. And I think if we really think about it, I think sometimes we think we listen to our bodies, but if we really think about it, it's one of those kind of like masculine things we've been conditioned out of is to either tune our body out, not listen to it, or not really be able to understand the signals because we've tuned it out for so long. So I think just listening to your body is the most important thing because your body has, first of all, our body has everything it needs to heal itself. I think that's important to say. And your body is giving you the signs and the signals to tell you what it needs in order to heal. So I think if we can really be intentional about quieting the outside noise of what everybody else is telling us our body should feel or does feel or whatever, and listening, tuning into your natural rhythms, right?
Mm.
Of your energetic rhythms, your hormonal rhythms, and listening to the signs and the signals. I think that's the most empowering thing you can do for yourself because then all these other pieces that we've been talking about just kind of fall into place because you're listening to your body and letting your body lead the way.
Yeah, I think that that's so important. And for so many of us, we're not tuning that instrument. Right? We're really
Yeah,
not tuning that instrument because we're taught that the answers are outside of ourselves.
exactly.
So I feel like
hmm
that is really important. And then bringing in the human design, because I know we've mentioned that quite a bit for people who are wanting to understand more about that pathway. I mean, where do you begin with that? And also with that, like what are the key things that you feel are so important to look at? You've mentioned the deconditioning,
Mm-hmm.
mentioned
hmm
that with some of the energy leaks and so forth, like what are the key things that you would suggest people to really, because I know it can be feel a little bit overwhelming when you first look
hmm
at design and there's a lot
hmm
of information.
A
It's hard to
lot.
get your head around. Like, what are we looking for initially?
Yeah, that is a good question because it is. And if you look, and depending on what site you go to, it's like information overload like immediately. So you can get, I mean, there's a million websites out there now. You can get a free chart. I typically send people to myhumandesign.com. I feel like she does a really good job of making it simple
Mm.
and it's not too overwhelming looking at it. And she gives like for the important pieces, she gives like a little bit of a descriptor, so you're not just going in blind, like I don't know what these numbers and arrows and all that means. If when you're looking at it, the big pieces you want to focus on first, like the high level pieces, your type, first of all, like understanding your type, understanding your authority, so how you're meant to make decisions
Mm.
and understanding your strategy, which is kind of how you're here to interact with like the energy the universe throws at you. And then your profile, which are two numbers. It's going to look like a fraction. It's two numbers. And that's kind of how you're here to show up for other people and how other people see you. I think those are the biggest. So your type, your strategy, authority, your profile, like start there with just those four pieces. And even if you only ever learn those four pieces, and that's as far as you get, that can change your life. Like just those four
Yeah.
pieces alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a lot of, information out there. And then I know that you can go deeper into understanding more about that, particularly if it's something that speaks to you. And it just feels this coming back to being open and being curious without straight
Mm-hmm.
away going, no, that's not me. Is
Yes,
that let
yes.
that be pointing you, showing you just some information here about what could I actually start to embrace here? What could I
Mm-hmm.
actually start to be curious about?
Yes.
And I found that on my journey with it, initially there might have been some of that resistance or some of that, like, no, this doesn't resonate. But when you sit a little deeper into it,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, right. Yeah, actually, hang on a minute here.
Yep.
There is something.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I love that. Thank you for sharing your information, your wisdom about that, and also just your experience with that. Because did you say you're a manifesting generator?
I
Yeah.
am.
So you
Yes.
typically have more of the energy, right? You generate the
hmm
energy.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes. And I like to have 58 projects going all at once. So that's something I've had to like be okay with myself because for so long I'm like, just pick something, just pick one, like stop doing so much. And I can't stop. So now it's like, okay, this is me. It's fine.
That's really interesting because I feel like I was like that.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like for my journey, it's actually simplifying. It
Yes, but which is great
comes
for
back.
projector.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
great, but I can
Yes.
feel the resistance around that because I've
hmm
operated in that way for so
Yes. For
long.
so long. Yep.
And I feel like so many people would be able to relate to this because
Totally.
probably most of us tend to operate as generators or manifestors
Yeah. Well,
in some regard.
yeah. I think, I mean, that's important to say. I mean, 60% of the world is a generator or a manifesting generator. Like we live in a generator world. So I think that there is a lot of conditioning around just another reason we're conditioned to like go, 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 do, is we're surrounded by generators. So yeah. And even being a manifesting generator, or a generator too, but me as a mani gen, like I still have to, I'm still human, like, right? So there's still a
Yeah,
limit.
yeah.
So you're still not, superhuman and can just do all the things all day, every day, forever. So you still have limitations on your energy that you still have to honor. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done there.
There always is, but that piece around also that you mentioned about really just getting to know your cycle, if you are
Yes.
still having a menstrual cycle, like getting to know and giving yourself that permission within that, even if you're not
Hmm.
in design, even if you're not doing everything else. I think that's such a beautiful piece of advice about just lean into what your body's showing you through your cycle and the natural
Yes.
ebb and flow of your energy that you have
Yes.
within that. And I know I had an astrologer on a couple of months ago, and she spoke about how that kind of ties in as well to the phases of the moon and when
The
we take
moon, yeah.
more energy around the
Hmm.
moon with our business projects and with our launches and things like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
all of that is so beautifully intertwined with our business, which I think is
It
great.
is. Hmm.
Amazing. So Hope, tell us about you, how people can find you or connect with you or what you're offering at the moment before we close out.
Yeah, yes, you can find me on Instagram. I'm usually most active on Instagram. I'm at the Hope Pedraza. I also have a podcast called Hopeful and Wholesome, and it's, I mean, a lot of what we talked about today, health, wellness, nutrition, spirituality, all the things. So you can find out more there. And my website is Hopeful and Wholesome. And I would love to offer a link to, I have it's the energetic detox, the holistic energy detox. I would love to offer that to your listeners. And it's kind of this three-part detox. And it covers physical body, the energetic body, and the spiritual body. And it's all about like detoxing each of those different aspects of our well-being. And it's just such a really great tool to able to use, I mean, to use on a daily basis, but just to really like reset and find out kind of where your energy leaks are. And it can be a really helpful tool.
Amazing. I will pop all of those details in the show notes so people can easily find you and reach out to you. I've loved this conversation and I love
Me
hope that
too.
what you offer is the kind of the tangible, like within the physical, and being able to get those results and actually work with something, but then you're backed with so much awareness, knowledge, and wisdom around the energetics and then the marriage of those two together, which I completely agree. Like you can be doing all of the things in one area. If you're not integrating and if you're not fully embodying it, I talk about this with manifestation. Like you can have the really amazing fancy vision board out there with all the things on it, but if you're not living it, if you're not breathing it, if you're not working through your blocks and your
Mhm.
worthiness piece and all of that, then it's just a pretty picture up on the walls.
Yeah, yeah,
It's a
for
simple
sure.
thing. This journey
Hmm.
of embodiment for women of really coming back home is so important. So
It
thank you for
is.
sharing and
Yes.
being here, and hopefully we will connect again in the future.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, Amy.
So welcome.